Okay, hey guys, it's Asha. Welcome back to Reading with Toby. Today we are going to be doing my 2025 books wrapped video, going through all of the books that I read in 2025 because I hadn't made any other like quarterly wrap-ups or recent reads, I realized. So I feel like I've read actually quite a few books that I have yet to talk about on my channel. But I asked you all on my community page if you wanted me to literally go through every single book that I read, or should I do it through like superlatives and just kind of talk about some of the highlights or the worst books. And you all chose the superlatives approach. So I think that is going to be fun. I have some statistics that we can go through, and then I have some superlatives, and then I also took some questions from the end of the year book tag, and plus just some other questions that I came up with to kind of go through how my 2025 reading year went. So let's just go ahead and get straight into it. The first thing we're going to start off with are the stats for 2025. The first thing is how many books I read this year, and I read a total of 41 books for 2025, which I'm very happy about. My goal for 2025 was 40 books, so I went over that, which is great. And with that, that means I read 12,494 pages. My average rating was a 3.9, which is crazy. Looking at my story graph, most of the books I read were 4 stars, which is wild. I will say though that although my average rating was super high, a 3.9, I think that's really great. I don't know, I don't know. I still didn't have that feeling of like, wow, I read some truly incredible books that have stuck with me. There isn't one book that is like my all-time favorite for the year. This happened also last year where like I read a lot of great books, but there just weren't those books that like really stuck with me like there was in 2023. 2023, I feel like I had some great reads, and then also maybe 2022. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I had some some standout books. And this year, although I had like 7 total 5-star reads, which I will go through with. Yeah, I don't know. There just isn't one book that I could tell you is my #1 favorite of 2025, but that's okay. Still very happy with what I read, my average rating, and the 5 stars that I was able to find. Did DNF 4 books, only 4 books this year. I soft DNF'd a couple, but I DNF'd 4 books this year, which honestly isn't that bad. And then the new releases versus the backlist, I feel like was pretty good. I had 39% of the books I read were new releases. I think I'm saying this right. I just wrote down a random statistic, so hopefully the graph is reflecting that and I'm not switching it in my head. But I think 39% of the books I read were new releases, then the rest were from backlist books, which I think is really great. 14.6% were authors that I've read from before, so I read a ton of new to me authors, which is also really great. So with that, let's go into if we were able to hit my reading goals for 2025. The first one I just said I was able to get, which was reading 40 books. I did that. I'm looking at my reading journal now. And my second goal for 2025 was to have at least 50% of the books I read either be by BIPOC authors or authors who identify as LGBTQIA+. And I didn't quite hit it. From what I gathered, I only did 42.5%, so almost 50%, but not quite there. I will say though, I'm not sure if this is 100% accurate because I don't know if like every single author that I said wasn't in the LGBTQ+ community is actually in it. Like, I don't know. I didn't go and look up every single author, but this is what I have from what I do know. So I do think, you know, I got pretty close, but next year my goal is to definitely hit the 50% mark for that one. The other goal that I had was to read more sci-fi, and I said I wanted to read at least 4 sci-fi books because I found that I never reach for sci-fi, but when I do read it, I love it. I always rate it highly. So my goal was to push myself to read more sci-fi, thinking that I would find some really great reads. But like I said, this is such a hard genre for some reason for me to want to pick up, to think about picking up, and I did not hit this goal at all. I only read 1 sci-fi book, and that was Record of a Spaceborne Few by Becky Chambers. This is the 3rd book in the, what is this series called? But the first book is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. So this is the only sci-fi book that I read, and I only gave this like 3 out of 5 stars. I'll talk about this a little bit more, but yeah, did not do well on that one. I'm not gonna put this goal forward in 2026 just because it doesn't look like I am gonna be reaching for sci-fi. The one that I had was to read more translated fiction, and I didn't put an actual number on this because I feel like I already try to reach for translated fiction. So this was just to remind me to reach for more translated fiction. And I ended up reading 4 translated works. I would like to have that up a little bit more in 2026, but I'm still happy that I was able to get to a few in 2025. And then the last one that I had was to read at least three books that were greater than 500 pages, and I definitely hit this goal. I read 4 books that were greater than 500 pages, and I'm definitely going to keep this goal for 2026 because I love a big book. The other thing that I had wasn't a specific goal that I actually wrote down, but I did make a series tracker in my reading journal with the intent to try to get further in these series or even complete some of these series. And the ones that I had on here were like the series that I was really aiming for, and I didn't do that. I didn't read any more books in any of these series. I only reread Strange the Dreamer. My goal was to complete the duology, but before reading Muse of Nightmares, I wanted to reread Strange the Dreamer, which at least I did do that. So hopefully I'll be able to get to finishing some more series in 2026. The one series that I actually did finish is this one. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I thought honestly it was kind of boring. I had to like switch to the audiobook so that I could get through it. The other big thing that I had for 2025, I did have a top 5 books that I wanted to read in 2025, and I did not do this. I only read 1 book off of my list for top 5 of 2025. And that was If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin. I'm very happy that I got to this book because I love James Baldwin. He's one of my favorite authors. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. This was incredible. I will leave a link down to a vlog down below where I read this book. We're following our main character, Tish. She is 19 years old. She is pregnant, and her boyfriend is in jail for a crime that he didn't commit. It takes place in the 1950s in Harlem, and you are very much in that world in Harlem. You felt like you're not in the 1950s, sorry. This takes place in the 1970s in Harlem, and you very much feel like you are in Harlem, and this is very like reminiscent of the time when this was written. It's also about family and relationships, and of course about just being Black in America. I absolutely love this. I tabbed it like crazy. I mean, James Baldwin is just like the master, like he is the master class of writing. This book was just incredible. I loved it so much, and I can't wait to read more of James Baldwin. Okay, and then the last goal, big goal that I had for 2025 was the Buzzword Cover Reading Challenge, and I did it, guys. I did it. If you've seen my other videos, you know I was like stressing a little bit because I didn't know if I would actually finish it. But I realized in November I read Alchemized, and Alchemized is a skyline on the cover. Duh. So I was able to use that one, and then I ended up reading this little book here for weapons on the cover. This is Holozine, which I got this back when I lived in Chicago. It's a horror comic anthology by local Chicago artists, which is really cool. So I ended up reading this to finish the final challenge. But you can see here, I was able to complete the challenge. I will be doing this again in 2026. It's really fun to do. So yes, so happy that I was able to do that one. Okay, and with that, let's get into the superlatives so we can talk about some of my favorite books for the year. Okay, so the first one is what was my most disappointing read for 2025, and that has to go to The Unworthy by Agustina Bastarrica. I was so excited about this. This was my most anticipated release of 2025 because I read Tender is the Flesh, which is actually right here. I read Tender is the Flesh by her a couple years ago, and this became one of my all-time favorite horrors. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I love this so much. So I was so excited that she was coming out with a new book, or a new book was being translated by her. She is an Argentinian author, and this was translated by Sarah Moses. So this one, I don't know, I found it just pretty average. I haven't thought about it since I read it. This is very easy to read. There's like no chapter breaks. It's almost like stream of consciousness, and you're following our main character after there's been like a big giant catastrophe in the world. You're not quite sure what happened, but she ends up joining a coven, and it's a very religious, very strict, very strange coven, and they're called the Sacred Sisterhood, and you're just kind of following her in this world, and she is writing down her life story like secretively because she's not supposed to be doing that. And then a new woman comes to the Sacred Sisterhood and kind of throw things into chaos for our main character. You do get flashbacks of her, like I said, she's writing her story, so you get to see her coming to the Sacred Sisterhood. But I don't know, I just found this kind of boring. I wanted more from it. I wanted to know more about the outside world. I don't know, this just didn't quite do it for me, so I was pretty disappointed in this. I did give this 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't a bad book or anything, but just my expectations were just so high, I think. Okay, so the next one is an underhyped book that I read this year, and I definitely immediately thought of one. That is Good Girl by Aria Aber. I have not seen anyone else read this book. This book was incredible. I think I also have a reading vlog for this one, so if you want to hear more of my thoughts. So like I was saying, that is Good Girl by Aria Aber. I have not heard anyone else talk about this book, which is crazy. I haven't seen it anywhere on Instagram, nothing. This book was shortlisted. Yeah, it was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2025. That's how I heard about it. And this book was incredible. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. You are following a German girl who is Afghani, like her parents were refugees from Afghanistan, and this takes place shortly after 9/11. Really is just kind of a coming of age of our main character dealing with that identity, and it tries so hard to hide her heritage from her friends. She falls in love with a German man, hide her identity from him. She's so ashamed of it, and she's carrying this like deep inside. She tells people she's like from Greece or from Portugal, never that she's from Afghanistan. You can tell that like really weighs on her. She's also just trying to find herself, figuring out what she wants to do with her life, if she wants to go to school or not. She's an artist. She is a photographer, and she's really trying to decide if that's what she wants to do with her life. She's also in this like toxic relationship with this German man that I mentioned, and he is a famous author. So you have like the power dynamics of that. I love this because you get a different, for me at least, I got like a different perspective of the immigrant story in Germany, because I feel like I've read a lot of books about that here in America, but not in a different country. So it was interesting to see the history of Germany and the impact of that on her. As well as, very interestingly, there's a lot of talk about architecture and how important that was to German history, and like how these beautiful buildings were destroyed in the war. And she lives in this very like ugly brick building called like the brutalist structure, and how that she's also ashamed of that. She doesn't ever tell anyone where she lives. So as you can see, there's like so much in this story, but it was written so well, and it's just one of those sad lit fic books that I love. And I think more people need to read this and would absolutely love it. This was one of my 5-star reads for 2025. Okay, so the next one is an overhyped book that I read this year. An overhyped book, does that mean like I think it was overhyped, or it just was an overhyped book, but I still enjoyed it? I guess I could go either way with that one. Okay, I think I have one. I think this is one of the more overhyped books. I feel like overhyped has a negative connotation, but it just means I'm taking it as I saw this book absolutely everywhere, and it did influence me to read it, and that is The Will of the Many by James Ileton. Yeah, I feel like everybody and their mom has read this book and also rated it highly, so I was very excited to check it out myself, and I also really enjoyed it. I think I have a reading vlog for this as well, or I'm like finishing it in a vlog or something. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. I'm not really going to talk about what it's about because it is so overhyped. I feel like everyone knows. But yeah, this was just such a good time. James Ileton he is so good at pacing and just keeping things moving, but I just found the magic so interesting, all of the characters very interesting. I gave it 4.5 stars instead of 5 stars, just because when I read a big book like this, I expect that I will become super connected to the characters, and by the end of the book I feel like I know them and they are a part of me. But I just didn't feel that with our main character, Viz. That's his name, right? Yeah, I don't know, I just didn't feel that with him. I felt like he wasn't as complex as I was hoping. I am hoping that will change in the second book, which I do really want to read. But yeah, I think this was definitely an overhyped book, but I think it's totally worth it, and I see why everybody talks about this. And the ending, everybody is right. Everyone who talks about the ending, it is mind-blowing, and like just opened up how big and wild this world is going to be. So yes. Okay, so the next one is my favorite main character of the year, and I couldn't pick just one book. I couldn't because all of these characters I love so much. So the first one is one that I always talk about, and that is Emmeline Wendell from Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I just love them both so much. They're banter together. I love them separately. They're just so great. My other favorite characters, which is one of the reasons why I love this book so much, was the main character in All Fours by Miranda July. She's actually unnamed throughout the entire book, but she is just so unique. This is another one of my 5-star reads for 2025. Yeah, I don't know. She is just so like out there, weird, but also she has this like emotional depth to her. She felt very complex, and I find myself thinking about her since I've read this book. I love this book so much. I definitely recommend, if you haven't, I'm sure you've seen this around because it was everywhere, which is why I decided to check it out. But yeah, I absolutely love this book. I actually got this book from the library and I loved it so much that I had to go buy myself a copy. So this is definitely one of the favorite main characters. And then the last one that I have to mention is Laszlo Strange from Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This was a reread for me. Like I said, I was hoping to finish this duology in 2025, but I'll definitely read the second one in 2026. I just love Laszlo Strange. I loved him the very first time. I said he was one of my favorite literary characters, and I loved him even more the second time reading this one. He's just so like, I don't know. He's just so different from other male characters that I've read in fantasy stories. He's so kind and he's there for other people. He's like tries to make people smile, but he's also like smart. He loves to read. He literally works in a library. He's curious. There's this one scene like early on where he sees another main character, something bad happening to this main character, and he literally is like decides to take on that burden just because that's who he is. I don't know. This was just so great. I just feel like he was just such a unique male main character instead of the typical like brooding, dark, you know, like kind of mean male main character. He was like the opposite of that, but still interesting and dynamic, and I loved him so much. So next, we'll talk about my most surprising reads of 2025. The first one is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, just because this didn't seem like anything I would ever be interested in. Like a book about fairies, a more romance heavy book, but super surprising that I loved this so much and turned out to be one of my favorite reads of 2025. Another, oh, I know the perfect surprising read, where is it? Here we go, is a horror book that I was not expecting to be what it was. So that is The Vessel by Adam G. Neville. I read this for Summerween, which I will link that vlog down below. This cover, right, is like super intense and scary. And this book did have this like horror moments where I actually was on edge. I was freaking out, which is also why I loved it. But this turned out to be like a good for her moment, and the ending just like surprised me, and this was so good. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It's like a classic horror story, so I definitely recommend. Don't let the cover fool you. I think so many people would love this, just because like you have a character that you can really root for, and the ending was just so good. I don't know, I just really loved it. It was, yeah, I was just surprised by the turn and the more feminist turn that it took looking at this cover. We're gonna talk about my favorite new to me authors that I definitely want to check out more from in the next year or the next coming years. The first one is definitely Ava Reed. I read A Study in Drowning by her. I also have this in a reading blog. I'll link that down below. I love this so much. This is a YA novel following our main character who is in architecture school. This has like very light fantasy element to it, and she is obsessed with this author who wrote this story about a fairy king, and she gets the chance to go design a house for his family after he dies. And of course there's more turns, there's a mystery aspect to it, there's a little romance in this. I loved this so much, and one of the main reasons why I loved it was because of the writing. Ava Reed's writing is very beautiful. This was very atmospheric and gothic, so I cannot wait to read from her next year. Like, I'm gonna read the sequel, hopefully. She has a new adult debut coming out, which I cannot wait for. So she's definitely an author that I will be reading from again. Another one is definitely gonna be Nat Cassidy. I read When the Wolf Comes Home by him, also for Summerween. This was so good. I was hoping that I would love his writing style, and I really did. It was very interesting. It was like, it has some like informal moments. He does things with the actual like with the actual words on the page. So I definitely can't wait to read more from Nat Cassidy. I have Mary by him on my shelves, so hopefully I'll be able to get to that one. It is a big book, but I think, you know, like I already, oh, it's only like, it's not even 400 pages. It's like almost 400 pages. Ooh, yeah. So hopefully I'll be able to get to Mary. Definitely want to read more from Nat Cassidy. He also has a short story collection coming out in 2026 that I would like to read. So next we'll kind of do some quick ones, which is the longest book that I read, Alchemized by Sin Lin Yu. This is over 1,000 pages. This is a dark fantasy set in a world where like the good and evil are at war, and you're following our main character Helena. She has these magical abilities, some of which she has to hide, but she is fighting for the good side. And she's like an outsider, she's a foreigner, and the good side is like using her, and then she ends up having to help out a character on the bad side. His name is Farron, and I loved him so much. And they develop a relationship, but this is like so much more than, yeah, about the romance. It is about their relationship, but it's just so dark and fascinating, and the magic system was very interesting. I loved how the story was told. You start off in like the present moment, then you have no idea what is happening, then you switch to the past and you build your way up to like where it ended in part 1. I just loved how the story was told. I thought it was fascinating. I tabbed it like crazy, and I will definitely be rereading this book like 100%. This was another one of my 5-star reads for 2025. And then the shortest book that I read in 2025 was this little one here. This is Bluets by Maggie Nelson. This is a nonfiction work on just kind of her like contemplating the color blue. She's always been obsessed with the color blue since she was younger. She collects objects that are blue, and she just talks about that, and also her going through a breakup at that time, her views on writing, her views on love, relationship, on memory, actually on color, on books. I wrote a little post-it note of everything that I talked about. I do have a reading vlog for this as well. I only gave this like 3.5 out of 5 stars because I wanted there to be more like personal stories in here, but I did really like it, and I also tabbed this one quite a bit too. Okay, another one that I wanted to talk about was the best nonfiction that I read this year. So I read 3 nonfictions, which I will put up here. And the best one was definitely I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This was so good. I know I'm like super late to the game, but I was driving to and from Santa Barbara. I went to Santa Barbara for a weekend, and I wanted an audiobook, so I just picked this one because I've heard so many things. And yes, I also gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was incredible. She is definitely gifted at writing, and her story is so fascinating. So if you have yet to pick this up, I definitely recommend it, and I cannot wait for her new release called, what is it called? I don't know. I'll put the picture here. I've already heard some mixed things though, but I'm still gonna read it. I wonder if she narrates the audiobook for that one, because if she does, I think I'll just listen to it that way, because she did so well with this one. So I would love to hear this one. Oh my gosh, I was stacking my books to make my thumbnail, and I realized I didn't talk about the worst books that I read in 2025. So that one, I think there's 2. One is for sure the worst book that I ever read, and then the second one is one that like I don't understand why this book is getting such high ratings. The first one is Sugar by Mia Ballard. Oh my gosh. I have a reading vlog where I read this as well. I was super excited about this because this was supposed to be a horror book. It's written by a BIPOC author, so I was very excited about it. I found it at my library, but oh my gosh, this book, I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. This one, you're following our main character who kills men. She's like a serial killer, and it takes place in the 1970s. There is this huge plot twist in the book, which made no sense. It made no sense because there was like no way you could find out about it. Completely unrealistic. Our main character was super insufferable. She really had no reason why she was going around killing these men, and to me that made no sense. Like, if I'm gonna follow a bad person, which is totally fine and it is fun to read, I need there to be a reason, or if it's just gonna be a silly goofy time, then it needs to be like, it needs to go there. but this just was not it. I found our main character very insufferable. A lot of things in this book were left unexplained. This book could have taken place in any time period. I don't know why she made it take place in the 70s. She took acid to go to sleep. That makes no sense. That actually doesn't make any sense. The writing was, it was like overly written at some points. Other points, the dialogue was so bad. Like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I did not like this book at all. And then the next one that I wanted to talk about, because this is what I saw when I was stacking, which is In the Veins of the Drowning by Kaylee Cassidy. So this book I saw actually people on Book Talk talking about, and I decided to read this actually when I went to Santa Barbara. It'd be fun to read a book about sirens while I was on the beach, and at first I was really enjoying it. I thought it was very interesting. You're following our main character who is a siren, but she has to hide this, and she's living with this king. She's just kind of like stuck there in this kingdom until she has to run away for reasons. And there is a blood bond, which I am realizing I do not like blood bonds or like the fated mate trope or whatever. I don't like it because I think it's an excuse to do insta love, insta lust, right? So there's this blood bond and they instantly become obsessed with each other. This takes place over a week, like ish, if that, and they're already like so in love with each other, so obsessed with each other, would die for each other. Didn't make any sense to me. The magic system and like the mystery and the actual like plot outside of the romance I thought was actually very interesting and could have been so good if maybe it was a little bit longer. But yeah, the like romance was super juvenile to me. This felt like a YA book, but was with just like spice, like an old school paranormal romance book that was like super popular back in the days. That's what the romance felt like, but just like with a bunch of spicy scenes. And then the other thing I didn't like about this book was our main character completely switches personalities like halfway through the book. At first she's like very quiet and meek and does whatever the king tells her. She doesn't really stand up for herself, and then one day literally she's just like, I need to stand up for myself. I can't keep letting him just tell me what I want to do. And then from then on, she was like super, like not taking crap from anyone, like standing up, like talking back and this and that. And I was like, that is so unrealistic. Like you don't decide you're gonna be strong and then suddenly it's just like, no one can do anything to me. I'm independent, blah, blah, blah. It's like, that didn't make any sense to me. Complete switch of personality. So yeah, I didn't like this book. I think I gave this 2.5. I added the extra 0.5 because the magic system and the world were actually interesting and this wasn't written poorly, but the people who gave this 5 stars, I don't get it. Okay, so I think that is all of the kind of like superlatives that I wanted to get to. I do quickly want to run through all of my 5-star reads just so you guys can see if you haven't yet. The first one is Black No More by George S. Schuler. This is a classic. I also talked about this in a reading vlog, so I'll link that down below. This was incredible. This was a satire that was written in like the 1930s, and it's basically asking what would happen if every Black person in America turned white. And I love this so much. It's very thought-provoking and sad that it's very relevant still today. We already talked about If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin. Good Girl by Aria Aber, Alchemized by Sin Lin Yu, All Fours by Miranda July, Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, and then of course I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Yeah, so with that, that is everything that I read in 2025, all of the highlights for the books that I read in 2025. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you guys are excited for 2026, I'm currently filming a New Year's reading vlog, so I will talk about my 2026 reading goals in that vlog if you're curious. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll catch you all in my next one. Bye.